Click the links to join me on DLive, Gab, and BitChute. Censorship is for commies. The truth doesn't fear investigation. You know how I know the earth isn't flat? You don't go to jail if you say that. You don't have to protect the truth, you let it free. So Mozilla wants to publish one viewpoint as factual and others as not factual. Wow, Firefox, you have changed in 20 years. Let's talk about censorship in a low-trust society. And first of all, stop calling the left fascists or Nazis. They're worse. They're Bolsheviks. So you've got a source that provides a story. The social media company will publish a warning that the story is wrong. If the social media company has a history for honesty and being impartial, fine, you can trust it. But from my personal experience, the opposite is true. If you make a YouTube video on certain topics, they will include a link to Wikipedia. But the wiki article is from an anonymous extreme left-wing source or from an online encyclopedia. But it's important to look at them. Are they biased left or right? Do they openly and honestly admit they're biased? Are their sources biased? When you look at left-wing sources, yes, you're going to find a circular chain of biased sources in an echo chamber. One article has a report on a public figure. The reporter claims they made a Istophobic comment. Instead of just giving the quote in context and allowing the reader to draw his own conclusion, modern media gives you the issue and the conclusion. Modern reporters are writing opinion pieces, not reporting news. A second article will now call the figure a phobic and use the first article as a source, and the cycle will continue. But when you start source tracing, you find these writers are biased in favor of the extreme alt-left. Then you get to the original source and find that the victim didn't make a phobic statement. He made a statement. The reporter called it phobic. That is a big difference. The Bolsheviks use language as social controls, like Scientology. And please don't come after me, Scientologists. You guys are nutty, but mostly in a fun way. If J.K. Rowling says men are men, a reporter will refer to her as transphobic, anti-LGBT, a pusher of hate. They are publicly signaling that she is a wrong thinker who needs to be pressured to follow the party line. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens when people use Gab and Parler, assuming Parler gets back online, as their primary apps. You can't pressure somebody on Twitter if they're just not there. I mean, you can try to bully them, but it's just not as fun. These SJW bullies will have to get on Gab to attack people, which is fine with me, but it means people can defend both sides without the platform censoring just one side. The open marketplace of ideas terrifies them because they have bad ideas that can't be defended. It really is as simple as that. You don't deplatform somebody unless you fear that they have a compelling argument. The opposite is true. You want bad ideas to get a public forum so people can point out possible errors, or who knows, maybe their ideas are good. If they have evidence about moon landings or werewolves, then the public should know. These tech oligarchs are a few years too late with the 1984 censorship. People being put on no-fly lists. The payment processors are canceling cards, so they can't rent a car to go home or rent a hotel room. So I guess they're homeless now because they just learned that corporations can discriminate based on political affiliation. Normies are learning that the social contract can be broken by the people in power. If the banks won't let you be a part of the cashless society, then we the people need to take charge of the banks. I mean that legally, of course, with due process. Americans need to be free to live without voter intimidation. If you can't vote for your guy and talk about it or attend rallies, then the elections are a joke and you are a slave. You are still a slave when an NGO tells you you'll be fired if you support the wrong party. That isn't America. That is an America that needs a divorce. We have irreconcilable differences on the issue of free speech. Social media is the new town square. If we don't have free access to the platform that our politicians are on, then the First Amendment is meaningless. The narrative is controlled by globalist CNN and Twitter. We don't have a free and fair media when it's 100% controlled by the alt-left. That is a monologue, not a dialogue. If you can't express your opinion on American politics in America, then you are a slave. If a social media platforms a politician, then that company has effectively selected the next approved politician. The left is cheering millions of accounts getting banned. But not every leftist is so short-sighted. One guy in a comment section here remembers that history repeats itself. Right now, the billionaire big tech is pro-environment, pro-worker, LGBT. They are allies while consolidating power. But they hold the power without checks and balances. What happens when big tech censors workers trying to unionize? Or what if they need to burn down the rainforest or pollute the wilderness to build a new server farm or mine some more lithium? Suddenly, if you guys complain, you're going to find yourself banned with no platform to have a debate on. The older hippies know what is up. Some LGBT do also. They know a corporation doesn't give a damn about BLM or the rainbow flag. They didn't care a few years ago. If a corporation is given a choice between profitable Chinese sweatshops or censoring some filthy hippies on Twitter, what do you think they're going to do? Dear Antifa BLM, who do you think has more influence with Twitter, you or Nike? Hate speech will just be redefined by social media to include anything that criticizes the platform or its advertisers. They could kick off BLM tomorrow, and you couldn't do anything about it because you accept the premise that the platform may censor and publish what it wishes. The principle of the left and big tech is that censorship is acceptable. This is what is making the older hippies very nervous. They don't trust billionaire, soulless, globalist corporations. Why on earth do you? And it wasn't that long ago when people on the right and left would get together and smoke a J. Like these, and a lot of times they wouldn't look that dissimilar. It'd be gray-haired, bearded guys on the right and left who kind of look like hippies who could get together, drink a beer, smoke a J, and talk about politics. So we're on the, and there's another kind of article I'm going to make, kind of carefully titled, your dad was probably a National Socialist, and so was mine. And I don't mean the Germans or the whatever. I mean, there was a time in America when people were nationalists on the left and the right, even if they were socialists. It was a different America in the 80s, and then in the 90s that all kind of changed. That's another article also on the changing how pornography was a feminist issue, and then that switched in the last 20 years to being pro brutalizing women, pro sex work. Yeah, you feminists, congratulations on that. But Coca-Cola's got a rainbow flag. Yeah, because it's profitable now. When it falls out of favor, then it's gone. The liberal left used to be champions of free speech, but the commie left is not the liberal left. They absolutely do not support wrongthink. They used to call anyone who questioned the narrative wreckers of progress, and you'd be put in a gulag and tortured to death. If you're on the left and you support censorship, you're very short-sighted. You have an illusion of power because it appears that you and big tech are on the same side. You almost feel in control, like you can influence big tech. You don't. You're swimming with sharks. You're going in the same direction. You and the shark change directions at the same time, so you think you're almost in control. You're laughing while the shark eats your enemies. But when the shark runs out of new fish, you are next on the menu. And to their credit, a lot of old-timers know this. Yeah, old-timers, but I guess anyone who's over 40, 50, something like that, they know, they remember the old left, and they know what communism is because they lived through the Cold War. They know when people came out of Russia and China, the Iron Curtain and the Bamboo Curtain, or Eastern Europe, they talked about the brutalities of socialism, the absolute socialism. You're never going to find anything more anti-LGBT, anti-feminism, anti-women's rights than socialism. If they need you to have babies, then you're going to have babies. Very few women were in power in socialism, socialist countries, communist countries. Old-timers know this. They remember this. Like I said, they're National Socialists, which is a hard term to, like, mention, even in a humorous way. But yeah, technically there were a lot of people on the left who were fierce nationalists. Like, there were guys on the left who were in the military and came out of the military. They were still leftists, but they were nationalists. There's a big difference. And communism has switched to globalism very recently. Communism wasn't about opening your borders. Like, communists knew that. They didn't want to flood their country. Russians and Chinese didn't want to flood their country with other people. That was a different type of communism. It is shifted. I will say, like, communists and socialists, there are some people in that movement who mean well. Like, they believe in the people's rights, but there's this difference between people who think, oh, it's going to be the workers unionizing the people's rights, which a lot of people on the right absolutely support. But you guys have shifted control away from these people's groups to tech oligarchs, these billion-dollar corporations. Now suddenly you're on the same page with Coca-Cola, Nike, Twitter, and Zuckerberg. Are you insane? I know if you're over 40 or 50, you know this, and you see the left is getting out of control, and you're like the moderate left is scared of the far left. They see these 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, and not everyone in Antifa is young. There's guys in their 40s, but you look at their mugshots, like, you got a crystal meth habit. I'm not saying you have bad ideas because you're doing drugs, but dude, get the drug problem out of you can tell. You're looking at these mugshots. I know what addiction looks like. I see their faces. It's like, okay, you're on something. You've got a problem. You've been doing. It says you're 45, but you look 60. So I'm going to say you're going to have better ideas. This got off track. You're going to have better ideas after you get clean and sober. And I'm not saying you still won't be on the left, but you'll be able to think clearly about it. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Guys, get on DLive, Gab, BitChute, get BitSlide. You can find all the apps online just because Google App Store and Apple don't carry the apps like BitSlide. They're still online. You can still find them. And I will see you guys. And I welcome everybody. If you're in BLM or you're in Antifa, but you're kind of getting a funny feeling that maybe this is going sideways, join us where we won't censor your speech. All right, I'll see you guys next episode.